In the oldest ballads of the forest, a secret about an eternally undying glimmer is widely rumored. According to legend, as long as that ancient paper lantern still burns in the dark night, the entire misty forest will never be devoured by nightmares of despair. However, no one could imagine that the owner of this lantern was actually an old panda who always looked slow and even a bit clumsy. Tonight, let us gather around the faintly flickering firelight and, with this story that needs no effort to remember, step into his true life. People on the earth habitually call him the Lantern Panda, or the last night watchman of the moon. At this moment, night, like a heavy black silk, tightly covers the entire massive mountain range whose end cannot be seen. The Lantern Panda's broad and somewhat steady black and white body is quietly standing at the starting point of a deep, narrow path covered with withered leaves. A somewhat ragged, faded deep slate blue robe hangs down to his ankles. His right paw steadily holds a lantern pole carved from withered bamboo. Hanging from the end of the pole is an ancient round paper lantern emitting a faint, dim yellow glow with a subtle scent of pine resin. That light is extremely weak. In the boundless thick darkness, it seems like a lonely fire fox that could go out at any moment. Everyone in the world covets the prosperity and warmth of the day, yet he alone chooses to thoroughly merge his massive life into the cold, lonely dark night. He raised those black, bright eyes, as calm as an ancient well, and looked deeply at the village of living beings in the distance that had already fallen into deep sleep. Then, he set off with slow steps, carrying that paper lantern that had continued for 1,000 years, and walked alone into the depths of the dark night where even starlight dared not easily venture. That fissure where the story truly changed direction occurred in an ancient epic known as the Starless Night. At that time, the misty forest encountered a tide of shadows from the subterranean abyss, and the moon and stars that originally hung high in the night sky were thoroughly devoured overnight by a layer of eerie, thick ink-black clouds. Darkness was no longer merely the shade of night, but became a tangible, dream-eating nightmare, capable of evoking the deepest fears and anxieties within living hearts. The originally gentle creatures in the forest, after being unable to sleep for several consecutive nights, began to emit despairing wails in the darkness, and even slaughtered each other due to hallucinations. At that time, the Lantern Panda was not yet this calm guardian he is today. He was just an ordinary hermit yearning for companionship, living in a bamboo building halfway up the mountain. However, when he went down the mountain attempting to use his thick fur to embrace and soothe those small squirrels and deer who were shivering and falling into madness in the darkness. Those small lives possessed by nightmares used sharp teeth and claws to leave deep, bone-exposing blood marks upon his broad black and white palms without mercy. The stinging of his body was far less than the shock to his heart. The panda looked at his home, once full of laughter and joy, turned into a living hell overnight, and for the first time felt the heavy squeeze of fate. On a silent, deep night without a wisp of wind, he silently bandaged his wounds, turned around, and cast his gaze upon that abyssal void of soul-eating that constantly flowed with ominous black water year-round. He knew that to find the forest's night again, someone must be willing to use their own light as a bargaining chip to make a losing grand transaction with the oldest darkness in the abyss. On that edge of the abyss where even the air was too thick to breathe, the Lantern Panda stood for a full 3 days and 3 nights. Shadows at the bottom of the abyss, like countless black giant pythons, entwined his legs, attempting to thoroughly drag his massive body into the void of eternal damnation. The Master of Darkness emitted a hoarse and contemptuous laugh from the shadows, asking this panda, "You are but a slow being that cannot even outrun the wind. On what basis do you think you can guard this boundless dark night?" The Lantern Panda did not answer. Intense cold energy constantly spread upward along the soles of his feet, freezing the hem of his blue robe to be hard as iron. At this stinging moment, without any retreat, he made a shocking decision that astonished even the Master of the Abyss. He slowly extended his right hand, forcefully stripping away that wisp of pure origin, originally belonging to the day and belonging to the warm sunlight, from the depths of his soul. That clump of light was brilliant and scorching, yet at the moment of stripping, it caused his heart to feel an intense tearing sensation as if pierced by 10,000 arrows. He endured the trembling deep within his soul, crushed this sunlight, mixed it with withered bamboo from the back mountain that does not decay and 1,000-year pine resin, and personally pasted together that round, crude paper lantern. He said in a cold voice to the abyss, "I return white day to you, but I swear, as long as this lantern still shines even a bit, I will take over the earth's dark night." At the moment the transaction was completed, the ink clouds in the night sky miraculously split open a crack, and a wisp of long-absent silver moonlight, somewhat pitifully, sprinkled upon his collar that was already saturated with fresh blood, when the Lantern Panda, carrying that paper lantern of glimmering light that had just been forged, dragged his exhausted body, which felt as if it would fall apart at any moment, back to the forest. Miracles silently spread through the forest. The faint yellow light emitted by that paper lantern, though unable to illuminate the entire sky, possessed an eerie magic capable of soothing all restlessness. Wherever that wisp of glimmer shone, the thick black nightmare instantly turned into harmless wisps of clear smoke, and the animals originally fallen into madness collapsed softly upon the grass one after another, entering a long-absent sweet dreamland. Living beings regained night's peace. They began to revel, began to praise the moon's bounty, and even erected a magnificent white stone statue for the moon goddess in the center of the village. However, the Lantern Panda, as the true savior, silently returned alone to his ragged, dark bamboo building on that most bustling morning. The price of stripping away White Day's origin was tragic and irreversible. From then on, he lost the qualification to walk under sunlight. Whenever the sun rose, his skin would suffer intense burning pain like being scorched by raging fire. His eyes also became exceptionally photophobic due to long-term staring at the soul's fire, and the edges of his originally clear eyes gradually blurred into two deep, ink-like dark circles that could never be wiped away. Generations changed after generations. They gradually forgot that starless disaster from back then that almost destroyed the world, and also forgot what that panda who carried a broken lantern past their door every night had sacrificed for them. The younger generation of small animals even began to laugh at his slowness behind his back, intentionally playing tricks on him on the road, and even called him the black-eyed blind man who stole the sunlight. The Lantern Panda never defended himself for half a sentence. He merely silently changed into that deep blue old robe at every dusk, and polished that ancient paper lantern that carried the soul's fire. Time silently flowed for a full 300 years between the cycles of wither and vigor of bamboo leaves and the wax and wane of the moon's phases. Trees in the mountain range grew a section higher and higher. Those old deer who had once received his protection had long since transformed into nutrients within the soil, while newly born children felt natural about the dark night. On a terrible winter night when a violent gale was blowing and rain was pouring down, the entire forest was thoroughly shrouded by a layer of damp, thick dark green thick fog. A young hedgehog playing outside, having lost its direction, lost its footing at the edge of a steep cliff due to extreme fear within its heart, and was stuck upon a swaying withered branch. Below the withered branch was a 10,000 jong deep valley full of sharp strange rocks and a rushing mountain torrent, and the small hedgehog's cries were quickly thoroughly covered by the violent thunder and wind. Right at the critical moment of life and death when that withered branch was about to be unable to withstand the weight and emit a crisp snapping sound, a wisp of extremely weak yet incredibly determined dim yellow glimmer suddenly pierced through the heavy mist screen. The Lantern Panda, carrying that old lantern that was violently swaying from being blown by the wind and whose paper surface was already damaged in many places, stepped slowly yet exceptionally steadily to the absolute furthest edge of the cliff. Raging rain soaked the fur all over his body, and cold rainwater constantly slipped down along his long eyelashes, making his already weak vision become even more blurred and indistinct. He did not hesitate for a moment, slowly laid down that massive and clumsy body, and stretched that rough, thick, and calloused left paw with some difficulty towards the deep darkness below the cliff. His fingertips wore out fresh blood upon the cold rock, but at the moment he gripped the small hedgehog, his strength was as immense as if he had grasped the hope of the entire world. When the small hedgehog was safely pulled back to the ground and tightly shielded within the Lantern Panda's broad, warm embrace, the wounds upon its body were shivering. The Lantern Panda did not speak a word. He merely wrapped the little fellow with that green robe that was soaked by rain but still carried body temperature, then gently moved that paper lantern closer with his right hand. The soul's fire burning inside the lantern suddenly separated a tiny dark gold spark at this moment, which slowly drifted down onto the small hedgehog's fully scratched back. A miracle happened again. At the moment of spark contact, the small hedgehog's inner fear and the pain on its body vanished without a trace in an instant, replaced by an boundless warmth and sense of security. The little fellow, within the panda's rhythmic, steady heartbeat sound like an ancient clock, felt its eyelids become heavier and heavier, ultimately leaning against his chest and emitting weak snores. The Lantern Panda looked at the child sleeping peacefully in his embrace, and the corners of his wrinkled mouth finally slowly sketched out an extremely relieved, yet also extremely fatigued gentle smile. However, that paper lantern, serving as the pillar of his life, after separating that wisp of spark, its originally faint light became even more dim in an instant, and the golden runes on the paper surface began to crack inch by inch. He understood that his 300-year-long night guardian cultivation, like this lantern's lifespan, had finally ushered in an irreversible end on this wind and rain-crossed night. He did not alarm any living beings in the forest, merely took off his robe and made a comfortable small nest to leave in a tree hollow, then carried that broken lantern that was about to burn out, and walked slowly towards the deepest part of the forest. A long time later, until this very moment, no one has ever seen that old panda carrying a paper lantern in the deep night in the misty forest again. Yet whenever night descends and scattered stars like a massive silver mirror illuminate the earth, every living being preparing to sleep can still feel an inexplicable peace of mind. Some say that he ultimately transformed himself thoroughly into that hazy dim moon hanging high in the night sky, using that gentlest glimmer, which is least dazzling, to continue watching over every corner of the earth. In his life, he silently walked in darkness for hundreds of years, enduring all misunderstandings, coldness, and the pain of soul stripping, yet never once attempted to solicit even a tiny bit of applause from the world. He used that almost obsessive restraint and silence, in the long river of time, to build an eternal deep night safe harbor for all souls wounded and fully weary in the day. Those soul-stirring, starless disasters and fate's cruel costs within the story have now all thoroughly landed with that lantern's vanishing, transforming into this wisp of warm and safe night shade beside your pillow. At this very moment, distant mountains have fallen into deep sleep, and leaves emit slow, highly rhythmic rustling sounds in the night wind, as if they are his gentle footsteps when he carried the lantern past the door back then. Please assuredly close your eyes, lay down all heavy thoughts accumulated in the day, and allow this wisp of breeze carrying a faint scent of pine resin to thoroughly empty out your thoughts. Good night. May you, within this serene forest guarded by the Lantern Panda with a life of lifetime, have a sweet, long dream far removed from clamor and absolutely safe.